Jakarta is disappearing. Right now. Some areas sink up to 11 inches per year, straight into the ocean. Around 40% of the city lies below sea level. The Indonesian government's solution? Abandon it. Build a brand new capital in the middle of the Borneo jungle for $33 billion. Except the money's gone. The investors fled. The jungle is fighting back. And the people ordered to move there are refusing. This is the story of the most expensive delete button in history, and it's failing spectacularly. Picture this: 10 million people crammed into a city built on a swamp, 13 rivers cutting through soft delta soil, and every single resident is pumping groundwater from beneath their feet because there's no piped water infrastructure. What happens when you drain water from under a city? The ground compacts. The city sinks. Northern Jakarta has dropped 4 meters in 40 years. That's the height of a double-decker bus. Just gone into the earth. Some neighborhoods sink 11 inches per year, making Jakarta the fastest sinking major city on the planet. When it rains, the water doesn't drain anymore. It can't. Large portions of the city sit below sea level, essentially in a bowl. During storms, seawater bubbles up through the soil like the ocean is reclaiming territory it never really gave up. The economic damage? $186 million lost every year from flooding alone. By 2030, that doubles to $421 million. Add the legendary traffic gridlock, people sitting in cars for hours, burning fuel, breathing poison, and Jakarta hemorrhages $4.5 billion annually. The government looked at the math and reached a simple conclusion. Jakarta is too expensive to fix. To save it, they had to leave it. So in 2019, President Joko Widodo announced the plan: relocate the capital 800 miles east to the island of Borneo, carve a new city out of the rainforest, call it Nusantara, which translates to archipelago in Javanese. The vision was spectacular. A smart forest city running on 100% renewable energy, 75% green space woven through the urban core, autonomous electric trains gliding on virtual tracks, buildings on stilts to manage tropical monsoons, a presidential palace shaped like Garuda, Indonesia's mythical bird, with glass wings stretching 177 meters across the jungle canopy. Singapore meets Avatar. $33 billion of utopian engineering, and it's collapsing before it's even finished. Here's the problem with building a utopian capital in the middle of nowhere. Someone has to pay for it. The funding model was straightforward. Indonesia would cover 20% of the $33 billion, roughly $6.6 billion. The remaining 80% would come from private investors, foreign companies, public-private partnerships, and creative financing schemes. Simple, except for one detail. A capital city doesn't generate profit. There's no revenue model, no guaranteed population. Without people, toll roads are empty. Real estate sits vacant. Water utilities serve nobody. Returns are speculative at best, delayed at worst. Which brings us to March 2022. SoftBank, the Japanese investment giant led by Masayoshi Son, was being courted as a potential major investor. Early discussions suggested significant involvement, possibly tens of billions of dollars. SoftBank pulled out. Let that sink in. The company that threw billions at WeWork, a business model based on renting desks, looked at Nusantara and said, too risky. When Masayoshi Son, who bankrolled Uber and a dozen other speculative ventures, thinks your project is financially insane, you might want to reconsider. But Indonesia didn't reconsider. They pivoted. Domestic conglomerates stepped in. Agung Sedayu Group, Sinar Mas, Adaro, forming consortiums likely driven by national duty or political pressure rather than market economics. As of 2025, the Nusantara Capital Authority reported several $billion in committed investments from dozens of companies. They need $26 billion from private investors. Current commitments reportedly cover around 15% of that target. 15%. The latest wins? A culinary center, a Marriott hotel, an international school. These are support services, not infrastructure. It's like trying to build a spaceship and celebrating because you've secured funding for the in flight snacks. Then President Jokowi, whose entire legacy hinges on this project, left office in October 2024. His successor, Prabowo Subianto, has different priorities, like a nationwide free lunch program for school children. The budget for Nusantara dropped from $2 billion in 2024 to $700 million in 2025. For 2026, $300 million. The original timeline promised completion by 2045. That's been downgraded to political capital status by 2028, meaning a ceremonial government seat, not a functioning metropolis. The full relocation of 2 million people quietly shelved. But here's where it gets genuinely absurd. While spending $33 billion to build a new capital, Indonesia just revived the giant seawall project for Jakarta, a massive offshore dike estimated between $40 and $80 billion to prevent the old capital from drowning. At least $40 billion to save Jakarta, $33 billion to escape it. Indonesia is fighting a two-front war against the ocean, and the existence of the seawall proves something critical. Nusantara won't solve Jakarta's problems. It will merely allow the government to run away from them. And even if the money magically appeared tomorrow, they'd still face an impossible challenge: building a smart city in a jungle that actively destroys technology. Nusantara's entire identity is built on being smart. Sensors monitoring waste bins, real-time water quality systems, autonomous vehicles, digital governance platforms, an integrated command center processing data from thousands of IoT devices embedded throughout the city. There's one problem. All that technology is designed for climate-controlled environments, not a tropical rainforest with 90% humidity and torrential monsoon rains. Atmospheric corrosion in humid climates is brutal. The technical term is time of wetness, how long materials stay wet. In Kalimantan, it's extremely high. Steel corrodes, concrete degrades, electronics fail prematurely. The U.S. Navy spends billions annually maintaining equipment in maritime environments with similar humidity levels. Now scale that to an entire city. The smart features of Nusantara, the sensors, the fiber optics, the autonomous systems, might corrode faster than they can be maintained. And what does the construction site look like right now? Satellite imagery from NASA's Earth Observatory tells the story. Scars of exposed red earth where dense rainforest used to be. The Garuda Palace stands complete, a magnificent glass bird with nobody inside. Around it, mud, stalled construction, abandoned equipment. Current population, a few thousand civil servants and construction workers. Early plans targeted over 1 million residents by 2030, a goal that now seems increasingly distant. But the real catastrophe isn't technological, it's environmental and human. Nusantara is marketed as a green city, a model of sustainable development. The master plan legally mandates that 75% of the governmental zone remains green space. The city promises to operate on 100% renewable energy. Here's the reality. Between 2021 and 2024, forestry operations in the region cleared tens of thousands of hectares. Environmental groups report significant deforestation in areas overlapping with orangutan habitat and carbon-rich peatlands, ecosystems that release massive amounts of carbon dioxide when disturbed. The toll roads cutting through Balikpapan and Samarinda fragment wildlife corridors, isolating endangered species populations and pushing them toward local extinction. And here's where the story gets genuinely troubling. Investigative reporting has traced timber from deforestation in Kalimantan to international supply chains, including exports to markets in the United States and elsewhere. The global demand for tropical timber fuels ongoing habitat destruction, legal under Indonesian law, but devastating for biodiversity. But the most damaging cost isn't measured in carbon or biodiversity, it's human. The land designated for Nusantara includes areas where indigenous communities have lived for generations. Land rights disputes have emerged, with some residents reporting displacement and inadequate compensation. Local communities describe being pushed out as development proceeds. Water access has been disrupted by dam construction. The compensation offered in some documented cases has been criticized as insufficient for resettlement elsewhere. These communities, who maintained the forest for centuries, now watch it being cleared for a capital city many never asked for. And even if you solved the money, the engineering, and the ethical nightmare, there's one final problem. The government workers ordered to relocate don't want to go. The plan called for moving 11,000 to 16,000 civil servants in the first wave, starting in 2024. The timeline has repeatedly slipped because the workforce is refusing. Jody, a civil servant at the Home Ministry, called the plan too hasty and pointed out that living in Kalimantan is more expensive than Jakarta. There are no schools for children, no hospitals, no entertainment infrastructure, just construction sites, humidity, and mosquitoes. The government's response? Officials stated that civil servants cannot refuse the transfer, citing employment oaths to serve anywhere in the nation. One provincial governor even reportedly proposed creating a lazy list to publicly shame underperforming officials on social media, though such measures haven't been officially implemented. Nothing says utopian future city quite like forced relocation under threat of public humiliation. So here's where we stand in early 2026. The most likely outcome isn't the gleaming metropolis of 2 million people promised for 2045. It's a twin cities scenario. Jakarta remains the economic and cultural powerhouse, chaotic, sinking, vibrant, essential. Nusantara becomes a quiet ceremonial capital for political elites. Think Putrajaya in Malaysia, or worse, Naypyidaw in Myanmar. Myanmar's capital is a ghost city, massive, manicured, and almost completely empty, a monument to authoritarian planning that ignored the organic nature of how cities actually form. Nusantara risks the same fate, a high-tech garden city with beautiful infrastructure serving a reluctant bureaucracy that would rather be anywhere else. Meanwhile, Jakarta continues sinking, still flooding, still gridlocked. The city still generates around 17 to 20% of Indonesia's GDP. The economic engine remains essential despite the chaos. The giant seawall might buy another generation of time, or it might fail spectacularly like the rest of this plan. Indonesia is attempting to delete its capital city, but you can't delete 30 million people. You can't delete the economic engine that powers the nation. You can't delete reality with a $33 billion vision board. The delete button is broken, and the bill is coming due. Jakarta genuinely is sinking. The crisis is real. Something must be done. But abandoning millions of people while displacing indigenous communities to build a ghost city in the jungle isn't the answer. Nusantara isn't the first megaproject to implode, and it won't be the last. But it might be the most expensive lesson in hubris versus reality that modern infrastructure has ever produced. So here's my question for you. When a city is genuinely dying, is it better to attempt an impossible escape or invest in saving what already exists? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want more stories about megaprojects, whether they triumph or collapse, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.